Hello my friends, this is Eric for Ocultus Ludum, and today we will be discussing Virgo vs the Zodiac. Bear with me for a moment guys, let me give you some context about the game. Virgo vs the Zodiac is a 2019 game developed by a small independent team, Munana, and published by Degika Games. Or maybe Degika Games, I'm not sure on the pronunciation. The game took 3 years to develop, which is very fast considering this is the team's first professional work, and was originally created, written and directed by one woman, Nana. The fact that the game is the brainchild of one person, and the fact that they had a small team and used no outsourced work are important factors why this game looks and feels so original. Nana took risks in the story and gameplay that probably a bigger studio wouldn't take. The game started as a demo made with RPG Maker in 2017, but it was obvious they knew where it was going from the start. The demo was good enough to push them through a crowdfunding campaign and get the attention of a publisher. So now they had money, quite a bit actually. And despite some challenges with the deadlines, they really managed to deliver. So what did they deliver? Apparently, Nana is some sort of Zodiac nerd, and she really wanted to make a game about the Zodiacs. So that's what she did. This is a cosmic scenario where the Zodiacs are powerful entities, each ruling a portion of the universe. But also, they are cute girls. And this is apparently very important, because despite having a Greek tragedy narrative, the story feels like you are watching an anime. It has funny, teenage-like dialogue, it has cheesy romance, it's a JRPG. Maybe it's a shoujo JRPG. The game has a pixelated graphic and Japanese manga style character design. It is not voiced, but it has a very rich sound gallery. It has basic exploration interface, a turn-based battle system, and shmup gameplay. It is a 15 to 20 hour long game with 3 possible endings and nice to replay at least once. The game feels very nostalgic. I spent many vacations as a school kid playing fun translated Super Nintendo JRPGs. If you are new to this genre, let me tell you what is the appeal. Imagine you are a teenager with no friends. I know it's hard for you, I know you were always popular, but try. And then you play a game where not only you are a strong guy that saves the world, but you make friends along the way, and sometimes you find love. For kids like myself, this was salvation, emotional salvation. Later in life, I found my place and my friends and my love, and I stopped playing JRPGs, but I have a special place in my heart. And Virgo hits me right there. Not only the game looks and sounds like an old JRPG, but it offers companions that you learn to love throughout the journey. If you open your heart to it, the story feels very personal. And I think now is a good moment to point that this is a romantic game. This is a game about political decisions, yes, a game with a lot of silly jokes, but it's also a story about a woman in love, so be prepared for some feelings, okay? On the technical side, the game is surprisingly functional for an indie title. I have personally encountered only 2 issues. When you project your Steam into a TV, for some reason the full screen has no sound, and also in battle the skill to take on an enemy attack in place of your friends sometimes has this glitch where it disappears or changes character. Yeah, there are probably more, but regardless, the team is very receptive towards reported bugs, and they're really improving the Steam version. Still, the game never crashed on my PC, the frame rate never fell, the inputs work well, and the game is optimized to playing controllers. Character design is really competent. The anatomy of the character sometimes looks a little bit off, but the coloring, lining, and shading are all top tier. Also, the designs are creative and original. The Zodiacs are so visually distinct from one another that I never found myself confusing them, even the ones I only met once or twice. The designer used word references to create each of them, like Japan or Micronesia. But also she took some very crazy liberties, like with this parasite flower and this doll-like body. NPCs also have character art, but some NPCs don't have character art. This is odd, because the space for their picture is right there. Like, why do lambs in the factory have pictures but the goats don't? They have the same importance in the story. I asked the developer and they answered, apparently each high-resolution portrait took a long time to make, and they had tight deadlines, so they had to choose some people to go without portraits. It is a shame. It is nothing critical, but it breaks a little bit of an otherwise very professional presentation. Besides good character design, there are story cutscenes that are drawn. Overall, the art is very nice, but these story pictures are pixelated and much simpler. Mostly, it seems they are used to portray scenes that would be hard to animate in-game, or to visually highlight an important moment in the story. The pixel art in the general exploration is the weakest part in the graphical department. It's not bad by any means, it's colorful, interesting, has a lot of variety, but the design is very simple and there is little animation. Because the visuals were done by two people, this choice of variety over detail is understandable. The developer commented on this as well. Nana says that the simplified graphic in exploration was a choice to preserve the typical RPG Maker format and to add some visual variation. I understand the choice, and sometimes it is quite cute and charming, but to me it felt like a production limitation. The map object and tile sets, while not so detailed, are very colorful and easy to understand. Also, everything is very distinct. Each zodiac world has its own palette of colors, its plants and denizens and architecture. There are Japanese references, Roman, Alice in Wonderland. The variation in such a short game is impressive. I really enjoyed walking around to see the worlds. They never felt dull. Battle animations are fucking amazing. They look good, they're very fluid, and there is much diversity. Each equipment type the characters use will prompt a different animation for each character. And there are many types of equipment, so many animations. In fact, battle art in general is very solid. The battle maps look good, the HUD and the quick time events are clear to see, the enemies have good design, animation and variety. I guess variety is the name of the game here. The sheer amount of different things in this game is incredible. I also have to mention the menus. I adore them. Things that are colorful for a reason. These colors represent qualities or effects. Everything is well organized and easy to see. One button changes character, one button shows the tail, one button changes menu. Easy, pretty, well designed. A bit overwhelming in the beginning of the game, but you learn to navigate it quick enough. Equipment that you have on does not show in your character, but you have a degree of customization through colors. You can buy outfit colors from this guy. I think he's a dinosaur, or maybe he's a dolphin with legs. I really like the music. I have seen comments from people who don't, and I understand. Virgo soundtrack is very melodic and has a lot of punch, a lot of personality. So if you don't want to be distracted by it, well, you might dislike it. Personally, I really remember the soundtrack fondly. Again, there is a lot of variety. There are like 60 tracks, and none stood out to me as annoying or indifferent. Have a listen. Most of the songs have that video gamey sound. Reminds me of compressed meats in the Super Nintendo, but the quality of sound is modern. The game has competent sound effects. Some are not so good. Mostly they are adequate and they sound crisp. The game, as I mentioned, is not voiced, and this is not a problem in itself, because the music and the writing are enough to carry it. But I would really have liked to see the characters voiced, and I hope they are voiced one day. I understand that this is beyond the capacity of Monana Studios now, but it would have been really cool. I'll break down the game in 3 gameplays: exploration, battle, and shmup. I will talk about the shmup first, just to get it out of the way. If you don't know, this is a shoot-'em-up game, or shmup. It is easier than a bullet hell game, but they are kind of the same genre. Games like Touhou Project made this genre really popular in the game developing community, and I honestly don't know why. In Virgo, these moments of shmup happen when you travel from world to world, similar to the space trips in Kingdom Hearts. But unlike Kingdom Hearts, here in Virgo you do not customize your ship, and these sections are entirely optional. You can go through the whole story and never play this minigame. So is the shmup minigame good? I found the game rather simple and very repetitive, but I admit I only took 2 dangerous space trips, so maybe further in it gets better. I really don't like shmups. I asked the developers why they put a shmup in the game, and they say it emphasizes the expanse of the universe. It reminds the players that they are, in fact, in space. But honestly, they seem to just have put it because they like it. This is an email with Nana, and you can see she's enthusiastic about it. Well, I guess that's okay. Maybe you like shmup too. Exploration is simple and familiar. If you played any JRPG in your life, you know the drill. Walk around, interact with NPCs and objects. You always have a main quest in your journal and a blueprint to guide you. But if you just go around like a lunatic, talking to everybody and doing everything, you will eventually get where you need to be. Outside of the main quest, most text you find is just flavor. But every now and then, you stumble across hidden items, or hidden fights, or a side quest, and this keeps exploration interesting. In Virgo, you can jump. But there are no punishing platforming moments except for one. Jumping is fun, but for the rest of the game, jump is a mechanic used in puzzles and to twist navigation a bit. Battle. This is where the gameplay really shines. Battle takes place in turns, and you select your abilities from a little menu that pops up. This is typical JRPG stuff, but many things in Virgo are different. The first thing the player has to pay attention to are the quick time events. When attacking or defending, you have a few different timed events where you have to press buttons. In these events, you can hit, miss, or get a perfect score. Missing the quick time event in an attack does not zero your damage, but cuts it very low. Getting a perfect in your attack raises your attack damage. The opposite goes for defense. A perfect defense diminishes enemy damage, and the failed defense will enhance the damage you take. These damage variations are very significant, and you will find yourself winning and losing battles because of quick time events. So this keeps you on edge. Personally, I think their normal speed is too fast, especially when you don't know what will be the prompt or where it will appear. So I changed mine to slow in the options menu. If you want, you can deactivate these QuickTime events altogether, but I don't think you should. They are part of the design, and they are engaging. The developer wanted you to feel like every battle is dangerous, and these minigames serve this function of adding a little bit of chaos to your strategy. Another important difference in Virgo's battle system is that there is a guard bar called purity in-game. Some actions raise this purity, and not only it absorbs enemy attack, but also if the enemy attacks when your guard is up, you receive a free counter action. Counter actions are great, not only because they are an extra action, but also because the enemy cannot counter your counter. Yes, the enemy has a guard bar as well, and they will guard and counter your normal attacks. So, my advice is really to try and raise your purity in every battle, because counter actions are essential. The skills your characters use are all equipped through items. You equip 4 items for normal actions and 4 items for counter actions. These items are divided in melee, ranged, guard, and area, each assigned in a slot. This is a little confusing at first, but you quickly learn to read the skills within the equipment and to decide your strategy. There are over 150 items to equip, so there is a lot of options, and the items never get obsolete because you can always upgrade them. Now, the last important thing about battle are the qualities, and the qualities are a bit overwhelming. I will let you see the developer's explanation for that. So they are like Pokemon types, but they also affect your attack and counter. It sounds confusing, and it is. I have seen people saying things like, "Oh, my attack was super low, and after some time I discovered this was because I had an equipment that was lowering my cardinal." This kind of thing will happen with you too. A skill sometimes will cause huge damage and sometimes will be very weak, and you will not understand what's happening if you don't review all your items and enemy types. It is possible to play the game even without a strategy for qualities. Personally, I never paid attention to my qualities and I still managed to brute force my way through battles in normal mode, occasionally facing a difficulty spike. But if you want to play in hard mode, be prepared to study your items for a while. I don't particularly enjoy this feature, but I see that many people do. It adds a strategy, and these qualities are linked to the story as well, which is interesting. One smart decision on the team was to restrict really powerful upgrades to the item levels, rather than the player level. Leveling up gives your character a 5% increase in some stats, but coupled with the QuickTime events and quality buffs and debuffs, even if you grind 10 or 20 levels above what you should be, you will still not break combat. It will be easier and you might feel rewarded, but leveling up will never make you OP. Only item tiers can really change the balance in battle, and crafting or finding higher tier items is locked behind materials you only come across as you progress through the story. So this is a very elegant and effective anti-grind system. I would never have realized it if they hadn't told me themselves. Overall, the battle system is really enjoyable and feels original. If you get tired of fighting at some point, interactions that cause battle usually have this little skull over them, in case you don't feel like fighting at that moment. Writing is both the best and the worst thing about Virgo vs the Zodiac. Beware minor spoilers for the early game now. A long time ago, in a time referred as the Golden Age, the universe was governed by the rulers. One day, the Zodiacs rebelled against the rulers and won the war. The Zodiacs are these girls who are also super powerful cosmic entities. The story starts with Virgo wanting to bring back the Golden Age. She says the Golden Age was better, and so she wants each Zodiac to give up their crowns. crowns. This is her quest for the entire game. And now my criticism starts. I hate Virgo. The developer has described this game as the journey of a villain, and there is a very conscious decision on the part of the writer to provide this experience where you disagree with your protagonist. It is a narrative choice by Nana where you cannot identify with the protagonist and self-insert. You know what is self-insertion, right? Most JRPGs use it to have these protagonists, which are just a vehicle for your roleplay. You put your name and you can play out power fantasies and shit. Virgo is not like that. She has her name, her feelings, and her objectives. And this is okay. It is okay to play the villain. It is okay when your character does something horrible, when you can understand why. In Last of Us, your protagonist lies and risks the fate of humanity for a very selfish, emotional reason. But you can understand him. He lost his little girl. He cannot lose her again. In Fable 3, you are forced to make some horrible authoritarian decisions. But you know why you do that. You do that to prepare to fight an enemy that would destroy everything. And this is my point. Virgo is aggressive and destructive towards almost everybody through the story. And it is very difficult for the player to understand the reason. You don't know what is the golden age that Virgo wants. The universe seems to be at peace and nothing seems wrong, especially in the beginning of the game. As you advance in the story, you see that Virgo is capable of kindness and friendship and love. And you also see that the other Zodiacs have character flaws that harm the people they rule over. So I started understanding Virgo at about 8 or 10 hours of game time. But this is very serious. Honestly, for me, this is the weakest point in the game. I actually gave up playing this game the first time I tried because Virgo was such a bitch to everybody. But the game was pretty, the scenario was interesting, I had to try again, and I am very happy I did, because it has a wonderful story and really funny moments. I know some people will find pleasure in playing a character that fights and offends people for apparently no reason, but I really didn't, and it was hard for me at first. Okay, Virgo is out of my system. Let us talk briefly about the rest of the characters. There is this caste system in the universe, rulers that commanded zodiacs, zodiacs that command stars, and everybody commanding denizens. The rulers were defeated long ago, and you have only very brief encounters with them in the story, so there is not much to comment. The zodiacs are all very interesting. Nana, the writer, actually tried to write the zodiac characters around the actual zodiac personality traits. And this is a good thing. Sometimes the character traits seem exaggerated, such as Capricorn's organization and Pisces' kindness, but this also makes them very unique and makes them meta-humans. Yeah, not like comics. I will go a little crazy here, but what I mean is that the zodiacs are more human than humans. They are archetypes of personalities, and this makes sense. In the story, they are goddesses. They represent forces of the universe. This exaggeration in the personality feels right. Thor always wanted a battle. Loki always was cunning. Bacchus always drank. It is the way gods are. Then there are stars. The stars are named after real stars in the zodiac constellations, and most stars we encountered in the story occupy high position in the service of zodiacs, such as General, High Priestess, or Knight. The stars seem to be the closest thing to a normal person in the scenario. They have free will and are mortal, much weaker than the zodiacs. Finally, there are the denizens. The denizens are the inhabitants of each world. They talk and have culture, but they look like animals, inspired by the ruling zodiac and other non-human things. They obey the zodiacs like stars do, but mostly they seem to occupy lower level positions. Unlike zodiacs and stars, denizens are mostly used as comedy and flavor in the story, with the notable exception of Gingerbread Man, Virgo's cookie partner. I love Gingerbread Man. The scenario writing is really good, really good. Many aspects of this universe are crazy and strange, but they are also fascinating. There are cannibalistic rituals, space reptiles, a virus that grants eternal life, but at what cost? And the universe is alive. Each world has economic and diplomatic ties with the others. The zodiacs have their intrigues and relationships. There is a clear chronology of important historical events. Everything is well fleshed out. I have seen a reviewer saying that the scenario is convoluted, and I really disagree. I think the internal coherence is on point, but you have to take the story seriously. I'll give an example. Sometimes in the story, stars die, and when stars die, they become supernovas. This seems very strange at first because, as I mentioned, the stars are people. They are not literal stars. But when they die, they literally become a supernova that can destroy a lot of things. Unless you go into the supernova core and pick a memory of the dead star. So it was not a literal supernova. At first glance, this might sound bonkers, but these scenes where we recover a memory of a dead star are actually very well written. And very sad, considering they are memories of a person that is gone. Also, it is coherent in the overall story, because every time a star dies, you can expect this will happen again. And it does. It is not a random event, it is a part of the universe, and they built upon this. It really adds a fantastical and emotional layer on the death of these characters. It is good writing. Very creative and poetic, and makes you feel empathy towards a character that you only met briefly. Besides serious scenario writing, the game is chock full of flavor text. Every bloody box you touch has its own little snippet of lore, or a joke, or a provocation. Some maps have hundreds of items that you can interact with, just to see a little bit of optional text. And the flavor text is top-notch. Really, I could not allow myself to leave an area before checking every little piece of text there. Personally, I think this is one of the things I love the most in this game. The world is full of these little experiences in text that you find if you want. If you look for them, it is your choice. This made exploration really pleasant. The plot is competent through and through. This is a story about people, about their choices and their feelings, so everything feels very organic and sensible. Everything that happens makes sense. Except, well, this was a weird plot moment for me. I would love to hear your opinions on this moment, so I will not talk about it. What I will tell you is that some things that happen in the story only make sense if you really understand the lore, or if you know what the side characters were doing out of their screen time. Remember, there are different endings. Depending on your choices, a zodiac might randomly appear and give you a crown. And maybe this makes sense when you think about the hidden agenda of that zodiac, but this involves putting a lot of faith in the writing. And this is an advice to enjoy the game. Put faith in the writing. It is best to play this game with the attitude, "Oh, this is strange, there must be a reason for this," rather than, "What? There is no reason for this?" The most obvious example of hidden plot is that there are 3 endings that resolve 3 different plot lines, each involving some characters. In my first playthrough, some zodiacs simply did not bother to challenge me, and it was really strange. Only when I played the second time, I understood they were busy with something else. What I would especially like to exalt in the plot that is really good is that you learn to love your companions. Hell, you even learn to love your enemies. You gradually understand them and respect them, and this is really beautiful. By the middle of the game, I was honestly suffering, thinking that I might have to kill a Zodiac at some point. Whenever I had a negotiation with another Zodiac, I would be really nervous about things going south. Sometimes they did. So this was it. Virgo vs the Zodiac. It's not perfect, but it is technically competent, beautifully original, and deeply personal. If you are a Call of Duty kind of player, maybe you don't need this experience. But if you in any way enjoy JRPGs, anime, or a good romantic story with player choice, you should definitely give this game a go. Munana Studios answered a review email for our channel with lots of interesting information, and much of it didn't make into the video. I will ask their permission to link it here or put it on the description, but only read the interview if you have played the game, as we discuss major spoilers. Thank you for watching this video, guys. If you enjoyed this content, I encourage you to like and subscribe. The schedule for video releases is on the channel description. If you know any great unknown independent games that are not on the schedule and that deserve an in-depth review, please leave a comment. Special thanks to Munana Studios. You guys were awesome, you were very cool and attentive with my questions, and you gave me a lot of support. Thank you so much. Cheers for you all.